Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and today I want to share with you my top 5 favorite books set in London. Now, this was really hard to narrow it down to just 5 books, which is why I am also including 3 honorable mentions. I love London. I think it is a fantastic city. There is so much history. When you've got 2,000 years of history in a city, how can it not be fascinating? About 10 years ago, Aaron and I took a trip to England and we spent 4 days in London, and it was fantastic and not nearly long enough. We actually seriously contemplated canceling the rest of our trip and just spending the whole 2 weeks in London. But we had a great time and we visited a lot of great places. So during this video, I am going to intersperse some pictures from our trip for you. And if I can, I will make them relevant to the books that I'm talking about. So I love London. I love reading about London as a setting because I love history, I think, primarily. But in order to make this top 5 list, I had a few rules for myself. One, I had to choose from books that I currently own, which actually really helped narrow it down. And the books had to be not just set in London, but London had to be a key feature. So it couldn't be a book, just a book that I loved that could essentially have been set anywhere. London had to be an important part of the book. And so these top 5 are in no particular order because it was hard enough to come up with 5. Please don't ask me to rank those top 5. So to kick it off, I'm going to talk about the Victoria Vanishes by Christopher Fowler. This is the 6th in his Peculiar Crimes Unit series, and it came out in 2008. I adore this series. It's a mystery set in modern day London, and yet they feel historical in a way. This series is quirky and funny and just imbued with a love for the city of London. And so that's why I picked from this series. And I could have pretty much picked almost any book from this series, although not every single one is set in London. So I just decided to go for this one, The Victoria Vanishes. It is not just set in London. London is a major part of the story. So just a little bit of a background here. The Peculiar Crimes Unit was a unit that was founded during World War II to handle cases that could prove embarrassing to the government or that would cause public unrest. The senior detectives in this unit are Bryant and May, Arthur Bryant and John May. And one thing that I love actually about this series is that these 2 main characters are seniors. They're in their 60s, very possibly early 70s. It's a little bit hard to tell. They don't give their age except for the fact that they're constantly talking about being close to retirement. John May is 3 years younger than Arthur Bryant. But they are fantastic characters. They are quirky and funny, and they've worked together for a really long time. And so they work well together. They love each other. Arthur Bryant he is an expert on the arcane history of London, which makes him perfect to be part of this unit and the types of mysteries and cases that they investigate. So London, like I said, is a major part of this plot. Essentially, in this outing in the series, women are being killed in pubs in London. And Bryant actually saw one of them entering a pub the night she died. He was walking home and he observed her entering a pub the night that she was killed. But Bryant the next day discovers that that pub no longer exists. So hence the title, The Victoria Vanishes. So here's some examples of how London is a key feature in the story. In chapter 2, John Bryant is walking through Leicester Square. He put the blame squarely on London and the strange effect it had on people. If he hadn't come here as a young man and met Bryant, he would never have been infected with his partner's passion for the place. He wouldn't have stayed here all these years, unraveling the crimes deemed too abstract and bizarre to occupy the time of regular police forces. And even now, knowing that it might all come to an end, he could not entertain the thought of leaving. You can't explain London, of course. That is the root of its charm. A pair of elderly men, overlooked by the young, whittling their thoughts into bar banter, ensconced in run-down public houses and unalluring parts of the world's richest city. What could they know or hope to change? So this is The Victoria Vanishes by Christopher Fowler. I highly recommend this series, and this is definitely one of my top 5 books set in London. The next up is The Murder Room by P.D. James. I love P.D. James, and this is the 12th in her Adam Dalgliesh series, and this came out in 2003. In this book, people are being killed at the Dupain Museum, which is a private museum that is focusing on the interwar years, 1919 to 1939. And one of their galleries is called The Murder Room, and it discusses notorious cases from that time period, and the victims being killed are being killed like those notorious cases. So this story ticks a lot of boxes for me. It's set in London, it's set in a private museum, which I find fascinating, and people are being killed based on kind of notorious past crimes, which I also find very fascinating. The museum is in Hampstead, and so there are a couple descriptions here in London. Adam Dalgliesh works out of New Scotland Yard, so they talk about that a lot. Here there's a character. From childhood, the word London had conjured up for Tallulah Clutton a vision of a fabled city, a world of mystery and excitement. The Masters of Bow Street by John Creasy. This is a fantastic book. This came out in 1974. John Creasy has written a lot of series with various different characters, but this book is even called, it says even right on the front, that it's his magnum opus. It is an epic. I consider it a masterpiece. It is about the creation of Scotland Yard. And so it's described as 2 great families joined by an accident of fate. So this takes place between the years of 1739 and 1829. There are descriptions. It takes place, of course, primarily around the area of Bow Street. And so there are discussions and descriptions of Newgate Jail, St. Giles, which is a slum, a rookery, Tyburn, where they hung prisoners, Bow Street, and Covent Garden. And I just adore this book, and deciding on my top 5 books set in London, I realized that I want to reread all of these books. It's been more than 10 years since I read this book, and as I was looking at it again, I was reminded of how much I enjoyed it the first time and how much I want to read it again. And so it's a saga of 4 generations united by a single dream, the creation of Scotland Yard, which I find so fascinating. And so, yeah, definitely on my top 5 is The Masters of Bow Street by John Creasy. And then, how can we have a book about London without including Agatha Christie? This is a Poirot, Lord Edgware Dies. This is from 1933, and this is one of the ones that's narrated by Hastings. And this book opens in June in a London theatre, and from the theatre they move on to dinner at the Savoy. So it is just so very London, this story. It takes place completely in London, and so I love that because Poirot is often off and about in other areas, sometimes other countries, and so this is one that's set fully in London. And some important pieces of the story: Lord Edgware, his house is in Regent Gate, which is St. John's Wood, part of London, and his wife, Lady Edgware, who was seen by a witness as the person who killed her husband, was away at a dinner party at Chiswick, which is about 8 miles away. And so of course it becomes, how can she be at a dinner party at Chiswick and also murdering her husband? So this is a great Poirot. I really enjoy this story, and the killer is cold. So yeah, this is a fantastic Poirot. I love this Agatha Christie, definitely set in London. And then finally, how can I have a top 5 series of books set in London that does not include Edward Rutherford's London? This book is fantastic. It is epic. It is a saga. It is a love story, a love story to the city of London. It came out in 1997, and it is 1,124 pages long, but it tells the 2,000-year history of this city, but in an interesting way. I like how Edward Rutherford chooses to frame his books, and so in this case, it's told, the history of the city of London is told through the lives of 6 families. And the book begins with the river and ends with the river Thames. And the dedication is fantastic. It says, this book is dedicated to the curators and staff of the Museum of London, where history comes alive. And in his preface, he says this: a writer preparing a novel on London faces one enormous difficulty. There is so much and such wonderful material. Every Londoner has a favorite corner of the city. Time and again, one was tempted into one or another fascinating historical byway. There is hardly a parish in London that could not provide material for a book like this. The fact that London is also, to a considerable extent, a history of England, led me to choose some locations over others, but I can only hope that my choice will not prove too disappointing to the many who know and love this most wonderful of cities. So I love this book. It is huge, but so interesting, and yeah, it's just so good. And so he's got some maps in the front. I like a good map. And then he's also got, here's a couple more. He's also got, very helpfully, some more maps, a family tree of these 6 families that he uses to tell this story, which is very helpful when you're considering that you're covering 2,000 years of history. So yeah, so that's my top 5 books set in London. Let me see if I can show them for you. The Victoria Vanishes by Christopher Fowler, The Murder Room by P.D. James, The Masters of Bow Street by John Creasy, Lord Edgware Dies by Agatha Christie, and London by Edward Rutherford. Now, of course, I already mentioned that there was no way I could do this without including some honorable mentions. So, Blind Justice by Bruce Alexander. This was written in 1994, and it's the first in his Sir John Fielding series. Sir John Fielding is an actual person. He was a magistrate of Bow Street Court, and he was also the founder of the Bow Street Runners. So a fascinating time in history. The book is set in the 1768. So this is definitely a book set in London, specifically around the Bow Street Court and that area of the city, and I really enjoy this series quite a lot, so Blind Justice had to make an honorable mention. Then we have The Yard by Alex Grecian. I really love this book. This is from 2012, and it's about the murder squad of Scotland Yard, and I believe like from when they were first developed. So Scotland Yard had been around for a while, but there wasn't a dedicated squad of detectives that investigated murder. And so this book is about Inspector Day, who is part of the murder squad. And it also includes a character who is a forensic pathologist, the Yard's first forensic pathologist, Dr. Bernard Kingsley. These are made up characters, although there are some real in here. And so again, this is set in London. There's some great descriptions, but I love that it's about an interesting part of history, the development of detectives and specifically the murder squad in Scotland Yard. And then finally, Plague by Cece Humphreys. This is another wonderful book set in London, and it's set during the time of the Great Plague in 1665. Great descriptions of London, and one thing that I love about this story is that there is a killer on the loose, but it's happening in the midst of the plague. So it's so fascinating because there is already so much going on. People are dying, and there is so much to do to try and just survive through the plague, and then you've got this killer in the midst of it. And so this book won the Arthur Ellis Award for Best Crime Novel. Highwayman William Coke is a character in here, and there is also a thief taker by the name of Pittman, and the two of them end up having to work together in order to seek the killer. Those are my 3 honorable mentions. Now, I thought it would also be really fun if I included at the end of this a quick TBR. So I've got 5 books that are set in London that I want to read. And so I will really quickly show you those. So this is my mini London TBR. Susanna Gregory's The Body in the Thames. I love this series, but I haven't necessarily read them all in order, and this is one that I have not read yet. It's the 6th in the series, and it was written in 2011. These are set during the Restoration, so the reign of Charles II, and the main character is Thomas Chalner, who works for the Lord Chancellor. His name is Clarendon. A delegation from the Netherlands has gathered for a final attempt to secure peace between the two nations. Thomas Chalner, active in Holland during Cromwell's time, knows many of the delegates, including the sister of his late wife. Then the body of his former brother-in-law is found in the Thames. Chalner discovers that the dead man has left enigmatic clues pointing to a motive for his murder. Was he involved in a plot to steal the crown jewels, or did he fall foul of one of the many people in London who are determined that the peace talks will fail? So first up on my London TBR is The Body in the Thames by Susanna Gregory. Then we have Sacred Treason by James Forrester. James Forrester is a pseudonym for Ian Mortimer. I love Ian Mortimer's work. He writes history. He does the Time Traveler's Guide to medieval England, Elizabethan England, and Restoration England, I believe. He's also written a book called The Perfect King about Edward III. And so I was excited to see him writing a historical mystery. And this is set in 1563 in London. Your God, your country, your kin. Who do you betray? Anyone could be a suspect. Any Catholic could be accused of plotting against the throne. Clarenceau keeps his head down and his religion quiet, but when a friend desperately pleads with Clarenceau to hide a manuscript for him, he is drawn into a web of treachery and conspiracy he may never untangle. Is there no refuge if your faith is your enemy? So yeah, and this is another one definitely set in London. And then we have Shakespeare's Rebel by Cece Humphreys. This is set in London in 1599. Elizabeth's last great love, the disgraced Earl of Essex, is plotting a revolution. John Lawley may be the Earl's reluctant follower and the realm's finest swordsman, but he wants nothing more to do with politics. Just wants to be left alone to win back the woman he loves, to arrange the fights for the magnificent new Globe Theatre, and to help his oldest friend, Will Shakespeare, finish the play that threatens to destroy him, Hamlet. But old allegiances die hard, and when John is sucked into the deadly rivalry between Essex and the Machiavellian Robert Cecil, drawn into the hopeless war in Ireland and finally called to the banners of revolt, he discovers that he must strive to be, or not to be, the man who just might save England. Fourth is Fools and Mortals by Bernard Cornwell. I've spoken about this recently. I picked it up on a recent haul. This is definitely set in London. In the heart of Elizabethan London, one man must risk all and play the part of a lifetime, and it is about Richard Shakespeare, younger brother of William. And then finally, on the TBR is London, the Biography by Peter Ackroyd. I have started reading this, but as you can tell, I am only barely into this one. I really enjoy Peter Ackroyd's writing, and this is a tour de force, honestly. Like, it is huge. The funny thing is there's less than 800 pages, but it seems like it's way more than that, doesn't it? But he writes, I like how he chooses to write about the history of London as a biography. And I think this is a book that I will slowly make my way through. So that was my top 5 books in London, and also 5 books on my TBR to read that are set in London. What's a favorite of yours? A favorite book of yours that's set in London? I'd love to find out if you would put it in the comments down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.